The most anticipated video of the week is here. We're going to talk really deep, in depth about Hynesy there, and if you should get him into your side. I've put up a little Word document, which is going to be fun, and Lockie's going to comment on that. But firstly, let's go through his team, and that shirt you're wearing there, Lockie, looks like a beautiful Eels jersey after their very tight win this week.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty, but a win's a win, and sort of really good Indigenous jersey.
Looks
Gonna
great.
rep that on Thursday at the Rabbits Dolphins game.
Beautiful. How good was the jersey the Tigers put out the other day, hey?
I think that was one of the most interesting and most blown up debacles I've ever seen, because the Raiders sort of had a problem as well, and barely anybody talked about that until the end.
Okay, I didn't hear about the Raiders one, so it just shows that the Tigers are in such a spotlight at the moment, and they should be, to be fair. So let's go through your team, mate. 9-18 on the weekend. Made you a few ranks, right?
It was the definition of a pass score. I went from 1161 to 1666.
Okay.
So lost 5 ranks, which yeah, that's pretty much a rank holding score. Yeah, Sloan and Warbrick were no good for me. Although I really would like to buy Robson this week, I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and get Teddy a week early. I think he can do damage against the Sharks defense in the middle, like through Moylan and Talakai, and maybe not lose too much. And I just need to get one of Warbrick and Sloan out of there.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that while you're here. Anyway, we'll obviously speak about them in the video, but what are your general thoughts on which one would you be looking to move on, and which one would be, for everyone watching, more of a priority to move on right now?
It's pretty difficult because Sloan has more base than Warbrick as a fullback, but he is more expensive and he scored worse. So his break even, I think, is 31 compared to Warbrick's 25,
Okay.
which makes it just that little bit harder. And he's a bit more money to move on for me. Also, a thing that I learned from somebody else is that Manly have conceded, I think, like 59 and 76 to right side wingers the last couple of weeks. And now Garrick's gone. So, I mean, Warbrick, if Munster throws some cutout balls instead of just letting it go to the centres, he might potentially go over for a try or two.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I actually thought about that. I was like, they're up against Manly, who've been conceding a lot. Because I'm trying to work it out myself. If I end up, just getting in a Jack Bird in the centre position and not play Alamotti, but then the Dogs have got a lot of their cattle back as well, so they could do all right, even though he doesn't have Addo-Carr there. So yeah, plenty to think about with playing Alamotti or Warbrick. And that last week just threw a big spanner in the works in that centre and wing fullback position, as you said, and everyone's kind of rushing to improve them, which is good. It obviously proves a little bit more balance in our squads when we have so many edges and halves at the moment. But you unfortunately weren't able to play Tapani last week, so getting him back on deck is going to be very helpful for your squad. And what else are the general thoughts on your team at the moment?
Yeah, I'm reasonably happy with it. I'm very upset that Hopgood looks like he's going to be a sell. I mean, 50 odd minutes without even Paulo there, and with his missed tackles, it's just not going to let him be a keeper, I think. He's got the work rate, he just has too many negatives in him. It's a shame because that duel and the Eels origin schedule was perfect for coverage through the origin period, and unfortunately looks like we'll have to look elsewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking with Hoppy. If this was probably round 9, 10, 11, you just go, just lock it in, hold him, because they're going to miss a couple of guys. I just think it's too far out to hold him so long, when he could probably get down to a 580, 600, right? If he averages mid-40s. Like, he'll have the game where he does get the attacking stats, but someone priced it tad over 50 to score you 40 every week. It's a bit of a killer right now, yeah?
Yeah, look, he's one of those guys that you kind of want to hold, but it's going to hurt you more than help you if you do so.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we'll leave your team for now. Let's go through to the Hynes chat here, and I've got my little criteria on why or why not Hynes there. So to start off with, do you own neither of them? So if you don't own either, guys, I think personally, obviously Cleary at that 84k cheaper is probably the better option just at that price point, because of what I'm going to explain a little bit lower. That if you're not someone that has a really good team value, like 12 million and above, I think it's very hard to spend 1 million on a certain player. The other question there is because he's only 84k less, and your Hynes at that 84k more expensive. If you want Hynes instead of Cleary, I think that's completely okay as well. Lockie, you mentioned earlier that you think Hynesy's potentially the better option, even at that slightly expensive price, just around Origin and things like that? You want to explain a little bit further?
Yeah, it's a tough one because he could potentially be definitely better or definitely worse. I think if you don't have Cleary, you can go for the antipod in Hynes because a lot are going to steer away after this week. However, there is a pretty good chance he's going to end up in the Origin squad after his form in the Dally M last year. It's going to be so hard to leave him out. And he does have a worse buy schedule for an Origin player than Cleary does. However, if he somehow doesn't end up playing like his 18th man and backs up for club game or something like that, he potentially could be absolutely a monster through the Origin period for you and gain you a heap of ranks and be a fantastic captaincy option. Not playing round 13, though, with a bye there does hurt a little bit, but yeah.
Because their next bye after that is when? It's just after Origin, right?
17, I think, and then they're done.
Yeah, so if he's in Origin, he misses 16 and 17, which is frustrating. Whereas Cleary has 2 buys in that Origin period, is that correct? 13 and 19?
Yeah, the Panthers, Roosters, and Titans all have buys in 2 Origin weeks, which is great for any Origin stars and bad for any replacement cash cows.
Yeah, exactly. So that is that on that one. So yeah, very interesting point 1. But number 2, there I said, do you have Cleary and another gun? Whether that's Moses, Johnson, Munster, Reynolds, Burton, any of those guys. If you have 2 guns already that are 700k plus, it could be very, very difficult to get Cleary in. To get Hynes in from there. So my thing was there, if you said yes to that, do you have at least 12 million in team value? My personal team has 12.35, and I'm finding it potentially difficult to get Hynes in as well as improve my center, who, playing Alabody could be a low one again. He's been pretty good across the entirety of the year. He only has 2 low scores, but we're definitely worried about the consistency. When you look at guys like Jack Bird, you look at Tungo and what those guys are doing on a regular basis, Penasini, Campbell Graham, there's so many guys that are doing really well. It's a bit of a one to go, if I go a little bit cheaper in my half position or bring in a gun center instead of a gun half, can I get a better score? That extra 20 or 30 points I might get in center or wing fullback, is that going to outdo bringing in Hynes? What's your general thoughts there, Look?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of issues in other positions like center and wing fullback to improve. I think if you don't have Cleary, Hynes will get you those captaincy points that you need. But if you're trying to get both, like the captaincy boost from Hynes might not even be better than Cleary. We don't know. Yeah. So it's a tough one to really figure out how to get into your team at the moment, especially with how expensive he is. I personally have Cleary and SJ, and SJ with his good Origin cover, I've decided that I pretty much don't need Hynes until after because he's doing so well, and I've got those 2 keepers there already.
Yeah, and would you agree that you definitely need one of Cleary or Hynes to captain?
Yes, they're the 2 clear captaincy options. Murray's pretty good, but he's probably just a rung below.
And then Haas as well, right? So that's that there. So yeah, the 12 million value, like just say you take the 350 away from my team, I could potentially get a good wing fullback and I'm probably playing 1 cheap guy and then have a pretty solid bench. Where if you take away that 350, you're probably playing a pretty poor guy on your 17th or 16th man as well. So you're hoping that Hynes comes out and gets 80 every week, which what we think he'll probably average around that 70 mark, which we'll speak about in a second. So number 4 there, even with a decent team value, but having the 3 halves over 700k, a couple of them over 900 and a mil, I think it just really means you're lacking in potentially the mid. If we're trading out Hopgood, we're seeing a lot of guys with no mid cover now, which is interesting. You're playing forward, that type of player. Center, the wing fullback, and then worst of all, your bench. What I'm seeing at the moment is there's too many people that are trying to get Hynes and Cleary, potentially have Johnson as well, and they have 6 to 8 guys that are under 350k, either in their starting team, in their wing fullback position, or their bench and emergency. I'm seeing guys play 16th, 17th man, be some cheapie, maybe it's Couchman this week. Maybe they're trying to play Isaiah Katoa, which you don't want to play regularly. And then they're 4 emergency players and probably not making money for the most part. Are you seeing that as well, Scoop?
Yeah, it's that extra money has to come from somewhere. And if you're playing a guy who's probably going to score 25 in most of the weeks that they're there, it's just going to bleed you points. If you're losing 15 from there and only gaining a couple from Hynes, it's really not worth ruining that balance, especially if it's ruining your money making as well.
Yeah,
it's the thing for me is that Hynes plus a basement cash cow is like what, 1,300. And so if you're going Hynes, you miss out on potentially two guns. But before this week, I would have said Teddy plus Brayley, or you could go Teddy plus Dewey. They're gone now, but it just feels like you get two discount guns that are much better value instead of going straight up to Hynes, unless your team fits well with Hynes.
Definitely. And, in terms of that value, that is still super important at this time of the year. Later on in the year, it's like, trade out some of these guys and make sure you get the best scorers in every position. So Hynes being one of the best scorers in the game, you're going to want him in your side, right? But right now, it's not a must, yeah? And that's what I was saying here with that it probably won't be sustainable come the buy period. If you have all of these cheapies and not many of them are making that much money, right? Especially with, we look, the next point there, could you improve this situation over the next 5 weeks? Yeah, of course you could, but this would be great if there's a lot of great cash cows at the moment, but there's not really many guys under sort of 350 that are going to be able to make you bulk cash like the Cardi party at the moment. So I definitely think it's not the best strategy at the moment to go all in on that, because once you get to the buy period, what's going to happen, Scoot? We've got 7 teams with a buy plus Origin in round 13. You then have round 14 potential guys trying to back up, which doesn't always happen, as you know. And then you got 3 teams on the buy. So how hard do you think it's going to be to get 17 on the park in round 14?
It is going to be very, very difficult. I think people are underestimating how difficult the minor buys are going to be this year, because in rounds 13, 16, 19, you only have to play your starting 13, so only 13. But in the week where there's still 3 teams having a buy, and some of us are having issues already, you're going to have a real tough time. Round 14, I think, is going to be one of the killers, because the guys that you wanted, the Eels and the Knights, as well as Manly, have buy. And Hopgood out actually helps a little bit for that. So when you've got like Miller, maybe Madison, maybe a Turbo and things like that, it's going to get really hard if then somebody doesn't back up, like, or they rest Cleary because the Panthers are top of the table, or they rest Payne Haas or Teddy. It's just going to make it incredibly difficult to field like even more than 15 or 16.
Yeah, and you're probably already going to have 1 or 2 guys that are maybe injured or not playing. Like, we've got Tommy Talau I'm holding at the moment, but he might be back during that period. But you're probably likely to have at least one guy not playing at all, right?
Yeah.
There's already 20, and then you take 3 or 4 out for those buys if you're holding, which probably going to be fair, anywhere between 2 and 4. And then potentially a few non-backups, and you're down to sort of 14, 15 already. And then a few of them are probably bad scorers. It could be a 15 or 20. So, I think that's really, really important, is to make sure that you're still looking out to getting at least a good 20 or 19 or 20 decent players that are going to be able to score okay, or you have plans to get some guys in that aren't going to be just 1 week cash outs that are going to score a ride, or in 1 week, or get you a 20 or 30. Really important to continue that, especially because we only have 21 players available in our squads, that you can make sure you have a good team running all the way through, at least to sort of round 16, 17, 18, right? You can probably get away with the last buy or 2, but that first few, team value and team importance of getting a solid 21 is really paramount there. So number 7 here, we've got Hynes. He'll probably likely average 68 to 72. So something to note there is that he's priced according to that. He's already priced up upwards of 70, 71. Is that correct, Locke? And then, you could definitely go up and down across the season. But, can you get some of the things you need to think about here? Can you get a 60 average from someone who's maybe in the 750, 800 range? And then you could spend that money elsewhere, exactly like you were talking, Locke. Any further thoughts on that?
Yeah. One thing that you have to note as we're sort of heading towards Origin, all the teams are sort of coming into their best form. The early season rust is gone. They may be getting a few troops back. The points, the dollar per point is actually going down now. So if somebody's expensive, they're going to have to maintain a higher average in order to keep that price high. So Hynes priced at $1 million, 68 or so to begin the year, but that's gone up since then. It's actually kind of more towards the low 70s. It's kind of about 13, I think, at the moment, instead of that 14 or low 14s dollars per point. So Hynes really needs to fire in order to hold that price, and you might even be able to get him a little bit later for cheaper. And someone like a Sean Johnson, who's averaging 60 and is still only 800k, could be a better alternative. But you are buying Johnson as a keeper now, not as a moneymaker.
Oh yeah, I can't believe he's already over 800, which is amazing. So yeah, when we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, guys, we were like, yep, Hynes is going to be a must-have. That's when Cleary wasn't scoring amazingly well, and now the last 2 weeks he's come out with 2 bangers, and that means that him, Payne Haas, they've come out and done really well. Hynes isn't that clear must because he was scoring just so much better than everyone else. So that's the only reason we're playing devil's advocate here. I still think he's a great option. Lockie does as well. But it's just having that think about your team structure and is it the best to pop him in your side. So last one there. Okay, if you don't pick Hynes, what would you do instead? Let's have a little discussion, Scoop. What would you do if you decided not to pick Hynes? We've talked you out of him. What would be your plan there? Would you, if you have 2 decent halves, would you go for a third half? Would you spend a little bit of money elsewhere, maybe fixing up the centre wing fullback, your bench, or that mids that we're talking about is probably a little bit tough at the moment?
I think the weekend probably decided for us it's time to fix up centre and wing fullback. Brayley is gone, sadly, with another knee injury. Same with Adam Dewey. I would have said by a third half when Adam Dewey bottoms out in round 8, but unfortunately that's just not going to happen now. He's gone for the year. And there's guys like Bird, Tedesco about to bottom out, all sort of floating around at around that 600k mark, and you can do a lot of good things with them. Another potential thing is buy people who are going to be really handy through the Origin period, like maybe Will Penasini, because he plays all 3 Origin weeks. He's going to be fantastic cover, and Moses still managed to go right a fair bit, even with Lane back last week.
Okay, yeah, it's very cheeky, and obviously those Eels guys are an interesting team. If you're sitting there, let's have a little think here. If you have no Eagles players, which is a start, and you're probably not looking like picking any of them up, you have Lockie Miller as your one night, and let's just say you have Cardi at the moment. So you've got 2 in your side that are going to be out in 14. Would you be happy to go for a Moses, potentially spend the 130k less and go for Dylan Brown, who hasn't had heaps of attacking stats so far? He's a scary one for sure, given he's just a mid-40s guy for the most part and then can go nuts. But would you look to pick up a Penasini or something like that and have 3, potentially 4 guys that are going to be missing in 14? Do you think that's okay for now?
I think you can definitely look to pick at least one more up. Okay. It was going to be really tough with Brayley and Hopgood probably both in there as well. Most teams were going to have 3 or 4 even, and now we mostly only have 1 or 2. So I think it is definitely a viable option to pick up Moses as a second gun half if you don't have him for cheaper. He just looks like he's doing a bit more this year than Dylan Brown. Maybe Dylan Brown will come good when the combination with Lane starts to gel a little bit more, like back end of last year. But he did score a lot of 40s last year, so you'd want him for pretty cheap before he jumped on.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, let's just go to Hynes' scores now, just to start things off, and then we're going to move on to Paddy Carrigan, who's a very interesting topic of the week, that's for sure. So, Hynes, you look at him last year, obviously scored incredibly well. He's come back even better than last year, just as a little bit of a nice average to start things off. He's someone that can go really big, like he did in that first game, and he looked just like he did it so easily in that second game back at 69. He has had a week off, which is great for his calf there and his tendons and whatever else is going on in that leg of his. But the other big thing is just his his point of difference there that people ask me about is the biggest thing there. And if he can come out and hit sort of a bunch of 80s in a row, that's where he comes good, right? I suppose just wanted to have a general bit of a chat around his scoring and I suppose the ease of watching him as well. I've been speaking about Payne Haas and these type of guys that are just easy to watch. Johnson, you just know they're going to get their scores. So any further thoughts on Hynes and his scoring there?
Yeah, well, last year the Sharks had a fantastic run, and in part it was to Moylan having a fantastic year. This year he's come back a bit, and that could potentially mean Hynes steps up and does even more. We've seen that in the first couple of weeks. He's looked doing like he's doing nothing and still getting points out of nowhere. So I think there is the potential for him to average more than Cleary, but yeah, you are paying a premium for that. In the top 1,000, 5,000, he's very pod. Don't be filled with that 14% ownership. He's actually only like about 2 or 3% owned in those top teams at the moment. Yeah. So if you get him in, he's definitely a pod. I think he's definitely a strong option, but only if it doesn't really damage the rest of your team. It's doable, but you've got to be careful.
Yep. Beautiful. And lastly, just their run of their 6 games here before Origin and his bye. So Roosters, Dogs, Cowboys, Dolphins, Manly and Newcastle. you see pretty high scores across that, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. This Roosters game is definitely the tough one out of them. Manly have been going okay, and Dolphins have been going well as well, but it's definitely on the softer side, and he could potentially average, well, I don't know, maybe 75 or 80 if he goes big once or twice in there as well.
Beautiful. Okay, I think that's enough on Hynes. It just shows that you can definitely play both sides of it for sure. So let's talk about Carrigan now. Is he at the moment just a hold or sell? Completely up to you. Like, he's going to be solid, but priced at 50 at the moment. What are your general thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on with him because he sort of seems to be doing what he's regularly doing, like getting a fair few tackles and a fair few run meters. The offloads have disappeared like we potentially thought they might. But yes, 48 in 75 minutes last week was pretty alarming. I think he might have been his sell if Hopgood wasn't more of a sell this week. So I think you probably just hold.
Yeah, that's how I said to a few people, actually. Hopgood first before Carrigan. So, well, just the biggest thing I'm noticing, the run meters is the exact same every week. He just went for 50 tackles in that first one, and he was just in everything. Every single tackle, he was thereabouts or jumping in as second or third man, and he's doing that less and less. I'm seeing to noticing him less on the defensive side than he was in that first game. So that's just something there that's just dropped his points. So he had 4 tackle breaks and an offload in that second game as well, and all that has sort of dried up, as he said. He had the 4 offloads in that really open game against Tigers, but I think he's just up to you on that one. Could potentially hold because you get him all the way through to 13, and there are guys that have a bye over the next few weeks, but just a tough one with Carrigan because everyone wanted him at the start of the year, and then it quickly turned to everyone get him out. So that's that. All right, so any general thoughts on Cleary at the moment? Coming off 3 awesome games now, 78, 80, and 100. Is there any chance that he's just back to his 2021 efforts where he averaged over 90 in that one, but that comes down to I think an 83 with the difference in the kick meters there?
I mean, it's potentially there. The Panthers have really recovered since their bye. They just look like a really good attacking unit still. He's doing a lot of work as well. He's getting through a fair few tackles. He's getting a lot of try assists. And the important thing is he's falling over the line for a try, which is what a big part of his 2021 inflated scores were. Yeah. The teams were tired after 75 minutes, and then he'd rub it into non-owners and go from 70 to 95 really quick when he fell over for 13-point try sort of a thing with a few tackle breaks.
Yeah, you just step back on the inside and go through, hey? That's my biggest thing for him is just he's popping up both sides, and in that top 5,000 he's owned by 94%. So it's high now, but he's still he's only at 42% across the game. So there's a bunch of people outside that top 5,000 that don't own him. So I think that last year was a bit of an anomaly. Like we saw his first 100 since 2021. He didn't score one at all in 22 there. So I definitely think he could be back to those top scores. And those first few games for Panthers were crazy, weren't they? So, Cleary, I still think he's the best option. But if Hynes doesn't play Origin, he's clearly on top, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like, Cleary's fantastic, and you should get him in now if you want, because he is on the up. He's heading towards that Hynes type of price. Yeah, if Hynes doesn't play Origin, he's just going to be so good through that period.
Perfect. Okay, Toby Couchman's the next one. 315k, semi-cheap, nothing crazy. He has around a negative break-even or close to 0 and has dual position. So he'll be interesting over the big buys, especially 13, 16, 19. He's out in 16 with their buy, but those 13 and 19, he could cover either position, which, as we said, guys, it's only the playing 13, nothing to do with your bench counts at all in that one. So maybe that's a potential way that he could help you. And his scores haven't been too bad. The minutes are up. I think last week we just inflated a little bit. Do you think he's about a 40-minute type of guy going forward?
I think he's potentially sort of a 35, 40-minute guy when the full team is there.
Yeah.
But the big thing to note is that Francis Molo is suspended for 3 weeks, and he could potentially boost him a little bit like we were talking about Sele the other week with Totola out. Yeah. But we'll talk about that a bit later. Arrow at prop might hurt that a fraction. I do like Couchman with his dual at his price, his break-even. He seems one of the best cash cow options this week. There's not really many below 300k, but there's about 4 or 5 between 300 and 370 that are all ones you definitely need to take a look at.
Yeah, for sure. They got Zane Musgrove to come straight in. So you think he plays similar minutes to Molo and doesn't really change Couchman much?
Yeah, I think so. It's probably Couchman keeps his minutes higher than they were before. Maybe not 48 again, but he's, I think, potentially got a 30 to 35 points in like a 35 to 40 or to 40 to 45 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, well, that would be great if we can get that, that's for sure. One thing to note is obviously he's super young, so talent is there for sure. There's been a lot of talk on him, which is great. So some upside on that. He came out and picked up 2 tackle breaks and 2 offloads last week. You could see that as a real positive because he's come out like, oh, I can do it. I can do great things out in the park in first grade. The negative to that is that could be a real outlier, that 48, and he could be back to about a 25 to 30. So he played 41 minutes the week before and got 25 points. So definitely not out of the realm of possibility there. So just keep that in mind for Couchman, but someone I definitely like for sure. Okay, let's talk about Hynes Sele now. So Arrow returns. Tevita Totola is out. Do you see that as affecting him much?
I think Arrow to prop is a little bit more annoying for Sele than it would have been if Arrow was in second row. Host is going to play big minutes in second row, now, but if Arrow's going to be at prop the whole game rather than sort of 20, 30 minutes edge and then middle for a while, it could squeeze Sele down from, say, like a 40, 45 minute role to 5 or 10 less than that. I still think at his price, he's a good option. And like I said last week when Totola returned, I think he's going to be a slow burn now, but still potentially making that money. I think a similar thing's now going to apply because when Totola does come back, I will move back to the edge and it'll be similar to what it was before.
Yeah. Best thing I saw with Sele last week was just that his work rate was incredible and he ran the ball with force. So he only got the 1 tackle break last week, but 130 meters, he tackled hard. He got a turnover tackle in that. So the only thing you look at there is 30 minutes is going to be really hard for him to make money because everything was perfect last week. Yes, tackles were low because when he was on the park, they had the ball a lot, hence the 130 meters. But the good thing is the week before, he played 47 minutes and got 30 tackles in that time. So he can do it either way. He can do it with ball in hand. He can do it defensively as well. So I don't think he's going to be a bad cash cow and he's going to be sort of lower ownership. I'd rather spend the money and get Sele than go for like your poor man Nicarima or one of those cheaper guys that that Sele's going to be fairly comfortable to sort of make a bit and potentially a score in your 17. Okay, let's go for Crossland. He's a very, very interesting choice this week and someone I'm seriously considering popping in my side. Very much hoping that he gets dual position as well today at some point. The only thing that worries me is that Ben Murdoch-Masila, he ended up getting his dual, so he's mid and edge now. He got that last night at some point. So hoping that, and it's usually is the Wednesday guys, they get the dual. So Crossland in the hooking position now, has played it a couple of times this year and it's his position. I hope he gets it. And I think that is going to make, it's going to be really important for his selection in our side. So let's have a little chat on him. Scoopy, what do you think with him at the moment?
Yeah, Crossland, he just seems like a really good cash cow, but Barry 2 did come out and say that and he will split the hooker minutes. I don't know whether that's going to mean a roughly equal split. I would have thought that'd be more like 55 minutes for Crossland and sort of 25, 30 minutes for Man and then 25, 30 minutes in the middle. Well, I guess we just have to see. But the thing is, it's hard to see because if he scores well, he could be over 400k next week and then really difficult to sort of justify bringing in if he's only getting sort of that 40-ish points.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. But, you look at here, 66 minutes off the interchange when Brayley went down in round 2. And then he got the start and got 72 minutes in round 3 for 55 points. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Man was out in that game. He had an injury for a couple of weeks, I think, as well. So you have a look, I'll keep going. But his point scoring is pretty solid across the board. When he's on the park, his tackling numbers are great. He's not someone that has big missed tackles. And even on the weekend, he had 2 missed tackles in the 5'8" position. And that's good news. So you'd expect someone like him. He picked 72 minutes and got 50 tackles in that round 3 game. So if he can get 60 to 65 minutes, that's enough, right?
Yeah, definitely. Anything over 60 minutes is a big plus in his books. Yeah, I did check, and that was without Man in that big minutes game. So slight concern there, but I still think he'll do all right. I do think he'll have the majority of it. It's just hard to say exactly where the split lies, given the Barry 2 is generally pretty good on the Knights reporting.
Yeah, okay, that's scaring me now because he's that 50k more expensive than Couchman too, and yeah, if he does get that duel, I think it probably cements him as a buy because what do we need from him? Probably a 35 average to 40 average. If we get that, he makes a couple 100k, pretty close to it at the moment.
Yeah, I'd say
150.
probably high 30s under the current pricing. If it's $13 a point, 390 would be 30 points. So yeah, he probably needs about like that 38, 39 average.
Okay.
Just say 40.
Which seems fair. Like he got 55 in 72 minutes. You take off, let's just say he gets 60 minutes, then maybe he's just a tad over 40, a little bit less than that. He's a little bit under that. So yeah, it's an interesting one because Kurt Mann's going to be that guy that if they do have injuries, he'll move around the park as well. So Crossland may stay there. And they gave him the kicking duties last week at 471. So maybe if he kicks out a dummy half, which we didn't see in round 3 or round 2, but potentially something there as well. So yeah, you're potentially graying me up a little bit on Crossland with that news from Barry too. I hadn't heard that yet. So yeah, very, very interesting. Okay, let's move to Reece Walsh here. 628k. He just continues to do great work. And last week was a really, really big one. They lost the game and he got 64 and probably should have had 80 odd if he just reached out and scored, right? So very, very concerning for non-owners if we continue to not have him. But if you're bringing in someone this week, it's going to be him or the next guy we speak about, Tedesco. You've got Brian To'o. You have Hammer if you don't own him. What are your thoughts on that situation? I know you like Teddy, but if you really liked Walsh, would you steer anyone away from him?
No, I don't think I would. The main question is, does he fit into the Queensland team? I think he has to get the fullback spot in order to be in the team because they'll probably carry Harry Grant or Ben Hunt on the bench because they like the 40-40 hooker split.
Yep.
So he might end up being 18th man if Ponga manages to play well because Ponga's done it for years, and Reece Walsh is very good in attack, but might need a little bit of defensive work as we saw on the weekend. So potentially, I think Reece Walsh is a very good option, particularly if he avoids playing Origin. But it's got to be soon. Might not be game 1, but maybe it's game 2 or game 3.
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. But yeah, that's the thing with Walsh. If he doesn't play Origin at all, you get him all the way through to round 16, and he'll miss 16 and 19 anyway. So yeah, I do think he's a great option. The only reason I'm going to be steering clear, if I was to see clear of Tedesco, is the break even, right? Because the thing with Walsh is, yes, he's an up-and-coming gun. He's never been this mid-50s scorer. He's been close to 50 when he was really good a couple of years ago, first year with the Warriors. But what we see with Teddy, who we'll speak about now, he's 12k cheaper. The bigger break even, yes, but he has done it for a long time, right? And he has those massive scores in him. The thing with Walsh at the moment, he's been getting lots of try assists and still scoring tries in those first couple of games and still getting 50. When Teddy does that, right, he goes bonkers and gets 70s and 80s and 100s, yeah?
Yeah, the round 6 game for Walsh was very positive for owners because only one try assist for 64 was very encouraging.
Yes.
However, I don't know whether he'll get 12 tackle breaks and 3 offloads that often. So Teddy, I think, does have that higher ceiling. And as you said, he's done it for years. He did really well in the first 20 minutes or so before he went off in a head knock. I think he got 19 in 24 minutes. And the Roosters just looked a better team. With him out the next week versus the Storm, they got touched up a little bit. But I think potentially with the Sharks having Moylan and Talakai not so good in defence, maybe they could shred through the middle like they did against the Eels with Hodgson and Hopgood missing a few tackles. And all of those outside backs are going to be backing up Cleary and Walker, and I reckon Teddy could be in for a big one.
Beautiful. I'm liking that analysis, and he could be making his way into my side. Very low ownership now, especially in that top 5k. And you look at his price point now, it's 616. He's lost plenty, and he has a couple of 40s in his, two out of his 4 games so far, and he's priced there. So really, he hasn't gone well at all. People are saying he's playing terribly, and a couple of those games before injury, he's still hit where he's priced at. So yes, the break even is high this week, but a few people I was speaking to, they're like, if you picked up Teddy now, come round 13 at Origin, is he going to be less than this price or higher?
Oh, higher for sure. There's
So
like a 5% chance that he'll be lower, and that'll be because he gets injured again.
exactly. So that's where it's like it's probably a no-brainer. Like, you've got a tougher game this week, but as you said, potential for good score as well. And he'll be hoping, and the Roosters will be hoping to come out and dominate for once. And then it's Dragons, Warriors, Cowboys. So all solid teams, but nothing great there as well. And then obviously Penrith is going to be a big one, but he's going to come out hopefully and play well in that one too. So Tedesco, a great option for your sides if you're thinking about him. Next guy on our list is Trent Loiero. So very interesting one here because I could potentially be using him as a trade out option this week. And he's not super highly owned, so I don't think that trading him out is going to kill you in any way. He's not going to be one of those guys that gets you a 60 or 70. So probably has a little bit more cash to make with his mid-20s break even. But if you need someone around that 500k mark, do you agree that he's probably one of those guys that you could use to move on this week?
He's one of the better sells. Like, Preston might have been a bigger sell if he got suspended, but he ended up not. So he's fine for this week. Tanner Boyd might be a sell, but there's no Sexton in the team this week, which is a little surprising, actually. So he could potentially be a hold, especially for Harry Grant's round 9 bye. Loiero is one of the better ones you can sell. I'd prefer to sell him probably next week, but you can definitely go this week if you have a good moneymaker or a really good upgrade.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. So that's Trent on that one. Just quickly touch on Tanner Boyd while you're there. My general thoughts is to hold with the kick meters coming back. He still managed to score well without them last week, so that was great signs with that 40. And he did get his try saver. Thank you to those who are asking about it. Yeah, do you agree he's a hold as well?
Yeah, he's a hold. That try saver and turnover tackle saved him. I was stressing a lot during that game, seeing Sexton just send bomb after bomb downfield without Tanner Boyd touching the ball much at all. But the tackles were enough, and the couple of additional stats pushing up to 40, and his money making still going. I think his break even's still below 30. He's still tick along as a bit of a money maker. And if you trade him out in round 10, when Harry Grant's back, he might have made you that 150k you're looking for, even if it came slower.
Completely agree with that. Yeah, that cover is going to be very helpful. Let's move to Jermaine Hopgood, and generally we both have him as a sell. Why would you keep him?
If you have a potential big injury or pretty weak forwards, you could potentially hang on to him as that cover guy, or you just hope that the rotation changes this week and he still holds on to good minutes, potentially even more minutes. I don't think that'll happen. Like, it just seems a little bit counterintuitive that Paulo back helps his middle minutes, but maybe he comes onto the lock position for Madison and Madison takes away from Cartwright and Hopgood isn't affected. That is a situation that definitely could occur. But what is he averaging this year? He's averaging 4.5 missed tackles and nearly an error a game. That's negative 10 in demerits to go with what's a reasonably regular work rate now that he's down to sort of those 50, 55 minutes. I think you probably would sell him over somebody like Carrigan this week.
Yeah, well, you look at these three big, they're massive scores too, 70, 82, and 85. That comes in 84, 71, and 68 minutes. So, yeah, even his 51 last week was in 62 minutes, which he just won't get anymore. And that included a try saver and his lowest missed tackles. So there's plenty of, things going his way in that one. And if you're holding him, you're hoping that he comes out and gets lots of attacking stats, which he's shown in one game that he had 2 try assists, which was just incredible. He was just right spot, right time, getting involved all around the ruck, and he's just not there anymore, is he?
No, and his massive offload count's dropped off a little bit too. 5 and 4 offloads, and since then it's been 1, 3, 1, 1. So yeah, I think it's time to move on from Hopgood at 700k. With the new price point, that is a 50 average or slightly over. So if he's going to be scoring that 45 to 50, he's just going to bleed down into the 600s.
Yeah, and as we said, if it was close to the buy period, we'd get it, leave him for sure. So let's talk about Tommy Trbojevic. He's been a guy that a few people are potentially looking at selling. I know Brian Sene, NRL physio, is a little bit worried about those back spasms and what that could mean for his output, and he's thinking of potentially selling him in Supercoach. So yeah, very, very interesting thoughts there. 619k is very similar to that of Teddy. Would you hold if you own him?
It's a very, very tough decision. I think it depends on how strong the rest of your wing fullbacks are. If you don't have another good option, if you say only got Miller and Warbrick for example, and then you've got Turbo who you're worried about. If he's not scoring that well for you, potentially you could move him on to somebody that's a little safer, doesn't have those injuries. The really worrying thing was, although it's the Panthers, he had 16 with a try last week, which sounded a little bit like week 1 where he got 40 with a try and try assist and 2 line breaks. So this is the thing with Turbo. A lot of people were coming out and expecting him to dominate like 2021, but didn't realize that in most of the other years, he is very up and down. He does have that massive ceiling, but he also doesn't have the floor of a lot of the other fullbacks. So if you are worried about him, I would potentially look at switching him for a Tedesco or a Walsh or somebody this week. But if you think he can push through and maybe a little low on trades, you can definitely hold, because he will recover. It just might hurt you for a week or two.
Yeah, and then the 2 following this week are Tigers and Titans, so definitely something to think about. I would personally hold, but I understand the worries, like you said there as well. Let's go to Sloaney. So you mentioned him a little bit, and he's been pretty consistent, right? He's had a 27 in round 4. If you look at it just like this and go 27 in round 4 with a try saver, 52 when he was on like 4 for the majority of for that first half and a good portion of that second. And then he comes out with an 8. So that's probably the reason to sell. It's like, well, he's pretty easily can go low. Why would you hold him?
You'd hold him pretty much for the same reason I would say you could sell him, because last week he was inches off getting a bunch of really good attacking stats, or just missed out on breaking away from a tackle and getting an offload and things like that. But that's also the thing that isn't in his favor. Is he big enough? Is he good enough to get away, make that extra little effort play, get it just right, rather than sort of mess it up and get that low score? So it depends which side of the fence you fall on that, and how strong your wing fullbacks are as to whether you'd hold him. I'm selling him over Warbrick because he's made a little bit more money and his break even is higher. I think I can do a bit more with that cash down the track. And yeah, we've seen it in the past where he can score an 8 or a 13 with a try sometimes. So it's just flashbacks to that.
That's for sure. He did have 4 errors last week, and he's been avoiding that for all the other games. So that's another reason to potentially hold it as a bit of a bounce back. And their next few games are Raiders, Roosters, Dogs, and Tigers and Cows. So not terrible at all. And you do get him all the way through to round 16. So positives and negatives. I understand selling. I understand holding. Either way on that one. We have a few more guys to go. Scoop, you mentioned you're keen to get into a big new buy schedule video for yourself. So looking over the next week or two, anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I chucked something in the private group about trying to make the perfect Origin team. So not a team full of Origin players, but one that will navigate you through the Origin period with pretty much 17 or 13 players each week, with minimal trades. So if you potentially aim for something like that, you can get away with minimal trades during Origin and be well ahead of the pack to storm home. It is going to need a big update with Brayley and Dewey now gone, but I'll probably talk about the hook position in particular shortly, with Brayley going down.
Awesome. Sounds great. Can't wait for that. I'm sure it's going to be, you guys will get so much out of it. Jackie Bird. So someone I'm super keen on this week, just with the consistency that he can provide, playing in the middle. The dual position's great, but really what I'm excited about is that consistency and then him being able to play all the way through until 16. Do you have any further thoughts on him? I know you own him, obviously.
Bird's a really handy guy. The only utility in the park, wherever he needs to, whether it's centre, whether it's back row, or he's even played in the halves a little bit, but he's come out and said that he wants to stay in one position this year, and they do have Mbai floating around, so I think there's a good chance he can hold on to that spot at lock. Whether he plays 60 or 80 minutes might depend on what the team needs, but he does seem to score well and have a really good work rate and get into it when he does that lower minutes, with that 52 and 47 in round one. It just seems like he's going to be a more consistent scorer than an outside back who needs more attacking stats.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on to our next man on the list. Is going to be Dylan Edwards, and he came out with an absolute banger of a score last week. He has gotten very expensive now, considering he's averaging 62. Is he still worth bringing into anyone's sides now, considering he won't play Origin?
Yeah, Edwards is a funny one. He's looking really good this year for fantasy. In the past, he kind of has done the work and been incredibly solid, but not a great fantasy player. But he is sweeping right and left this year, getting more involved in the attack. The thing is, he's not actually that great Origin cover. Because the Panthers have a good buy schedule for Cleary, that means it's not great for any non-Origin guys because he only plays one Origin round that you'll get that score for. And he is significantly more expensive. So I personally wouldn't unless you're a head-to-head player.
There you go. I like it. Let's go on to our last three. We've got Latrell Mitchell. What would you do with him at 679k? Is he an important player to bring in your side? Or, again, maybe a head-to-head play?
Yeah, I think he's more a head-to-head play. He's bottomed out and has actually shown some good scores, unlike Tedesco so far. But he is high 600s. He's sort of in that middle bracket between Teddy and Edwards. His Origin schedule is a lot worse for overall than Tedesco. So if you're an overall player, I wouldn't go for him. Head-to-head looks a really good option. It just sort of depends whether you think that the Rabbitohs are going to go really well over this next little bit, potentially with Dolphins, Panthers, Broncos, and Melbourne to finish off that really tough buy schedule in the last, really tough draw in the next month.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I agree with that. Yeah, I'd personally avoid him. And I'd prefer to go 100k less and go for Brian To'o, who's our next guy on the list at 579k. He's starting to display much better scores after really only having one poor one. Since that 29 in round one, he's had his buy in round three, but his lowest has been 45. Highest has been 58. 2 tries for the season. Very exciting news. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he's sort of one that was under the radar. We looked at him a little bit in preseason, but he needs a bit more attacking stats to be that top class keeper. But he is getting really handy base stats that we were hoping for, and we saw in 2021. It might have put us off that Taruva is also chewing up those run meters and things like that. But he has run for 200 meters 4 out of those 5 games that he's been available. I think he's a really good option if Penrith can keep going well with their attack. And he will play Origin, though, almost for sure with Addo-Carr gone. But as is the same with Cleary, he does have a decent Origin buy schedule. So it's not a bad buy. Not one I'd go for, but if you wanted a pod, definitely one of the better ones.
Yeah, I suppose you can go up for Tedesco, who's likely to score better at 40k more. So pretty much a pretty easy one there. Other ones just to mention before we finish off with Sonny Luke. Cam Mciness, general thoughts on him this week? Would you potentially buy? Do you think that he's going to move into the front row rotation, or will he still get big minutes after Finucane comes back?
I think Finucane's probably more likely to move into the front row rotation. Okay. Rudolph out for 3 months helps Mciness long term. Mm-hmm. I just want to see what happens this week with Mciness's minutes, because he has seemed a little bit down on form and minutes starting this year, even compared to last year when he was coming off the bench. Mm-hmm. You'd be spewing if you brought him in and he only got 50 minutes with Finucane out, rather than that sort of 55, 60 minutes and sort of those keeper level scores.
Yeah, that's when he averages 50 plus, isn't he, when he gets about that 60. So that's that with him. Joey Manu, any thoughts on him right now, or again, waiting with him? Still got money to lose.
Yeah, wait. He slowed his price drops down with a decent score on the weekend, but yeah, it's still not quite there. I think because of the Roosters' good buy schedule for Origin players, Manu isn't going to be quite as handy as this year, and I'd probably go for Jack Bird at a bit cheaper. Okay,
easy. And then Sonny Luke to finish 309. Thoughts on him as an option?
I quite like him. Fisher Harris out, I think, means Kenny will definitely have to play a little bit more middle, which means better minutes for Sonny Luke long term. The worry would be potentially Martin when he comes back. If Scott Sorensen plays a little bit of edge and middle and sort of messes up with Sonny Luke's minutes a bit. But I think for now, it's better for him than it has been previous to Fisher Harris's injury.
Yeah, it just reminds me a little bit of like bringing Isaiah Katoa in last week. It just the position that he's in, kick meters and stuff is better. Sonny there, they look great when he's attacking, and he obviously got 2 tries this last week, and that's something to note. 25 tackles, 0 misses as well. So it's pretty much a perfect game. And, you know, if you bring him in now, you want him to hit sort of a 30 average at least. And, you know, can he get that? Can he get 54 minutes? There are a lot of questions, but I definitely think he's a solid one to pick up. And this might be the right time compared to the unlucky time in round 1, 2, or 3 there. So yeah, that's the general thoughts there, Scoop. I thank you very much for that one, and I hope everyone got a lot out of that Hynes chat at the start. It's such an interesting week, and I think there's going to be so many movements. There could be scores of 1,050, and there could be scores of like 800, depending on how many trades you make, and if you make the correct ones. If the wing, fullback, and center position goes great, if you have a strong bench, like there's so many things to think about there. Any final thoughts, Scoop?
Yeah, just remember the Tigers have a bye this week, and if you have Blore, loop him, because you're probably wanting that 17th score to be a solid one, whether it's Alamotti, Couchman, Sonny Luke, or somebody along those lines. Make sure you make use of that.
Talau and Blore, hey? There you go. Yeah, again, big thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. See you later.